Yeah, yeah. No, I know them, yes. They're both wonderful people.
Well, I guess we'll start. I thought today I'd talk about Christmas, but the more I looked into it, the more little bits I found here and there and elsewhere, and I thought, well, instead of going straight out Christmas, why don't we do little bits of facts here and there? And so I'm going to start off with the worst one. This is about, it's called The Dark Origins of Santa. Saint Nick and the French cannibal de Pierre Fatard. Everybody knows Saint Nicholas as the inspiration for modern-day Santa Claus, but what you may not know is an insanely dark and gory origin story in how he became known as Father of Christmas. It all has to do with a French butcher, or in 1150 AD version of the tale, an innkeeper, who some say craved human flesh. Others assert that there was a terrible famine going on in his village and children just seemed like a good source of protein at the time. Either way, the butcher or his wife lured 3 boys into their shop where they committed what they thought was a perfect crime. And this is where it becomes more of a horror movie than a Christmas origin story. The butcher is said to have killed the 3 boys, chopped them up, and salted them before putting them in a pickling tub. Apparently, the plan was to sell the boys' flesh as ham or sausage after having a few bites of seasoned meat himself. But luckily, Saint Nick showed up just in time. Legend has it he saved the day by bringing the 3 boys back from the dead, despite their being pickled, and taking the butcher into his custody. And that's the dark story of how Saint Nick became the patron saint of children, the inspiration for Santa Claus. And the butcher became the Pierre Fatard, which translates to Father Whipper, or Old Man Whipper in French. He's basically Saint Nick's sidekick and deals with any guff, naughty kids that might give him or their parents a problem. So that's where the naughty kids have to look out for. I hadn't heard that one before. That one just kind of blows my mind. The thing about him telling about children being chopped up and put in a pickling, right? But I thought we'd start out with some of the early, so we got the bad one out of the way, and we'll go on to the fun stuff. There is the fact that in 1126, the first bishop of Godar Arnadur, who was ordained by the Archbishop of Lund in 1124, arrived in Greenland and started the construction of a cathedral devoted to St. Nicholas, patron saint of sailors. And in 1492, Columbus entered a port at the extreme west end of the island of Santo Domingo, or as the island was called back then, Haiti. The natives called it Port Boyo, but Columbus christened it in honor of the day he arrived, St. Nicholas Day, December 6th, Port St. Nicholas. The first celebration of the Feast of St. Nicholas in America probably originated in Albany, imported from the Netherlands. A 1675 baker's account mentions that Maria van Rensselaer bought Santa Claus goods, illustrating that the Feast of St. Nicholas was celebrated in Albany at that time. This item could possibly be the earliest reference to the celebration of St. Nicholas in New Netherlands. So very early on. Sometime around 1740, the Spanish built a fort in Florida that would later become Jacksonville. Its purpose was to defend Cowford Crossing, also known as the Pass of St. Nicholas, to protect settlers and missionaries from Indians, preserve South Florida against the British and Americans, and prevent smugglers from using St. John's River. Here and there, everywhere. As St. Nicholas, the earliest mention in America is an item in Rivington's Gazette for December 23rd, 1773. Last Monday, the anniversary of St. Nicholas, otherwise called Santa Claus, was celebrated at Protestant Hall at Mr. Waldron's, where a great number of sons of that ancient saint celebrated the day with great joy and festivity. That same year, New York non-Dutch patriots formed the Sons of St. Nicholas, primarily as a non-British symbol to counter the English St. George societies, rather than to honor St. Nicholas. And so there was a lot of competition. All these are but clues as to what might have been going on. It's not until 1809, with the publication of Washington Irving's A History of New York from the beginning of the world to the end of the Dutch dynasty, that we see the real legend of Santa Claus in America beginning to take shape. So there were a lot of ways that Santa was portrayed, or kind of portrayed, or the suggestion was there a long time before the traditional story of St. Nicholas that we know, that we heard as kids. 20 surprising stories behind popular Christmas decorations. Green and red. The colors are thought to be inspired by the Paradise Tree, a fir tree with apples that was used as a prop in the Paradise play, an 11th century play about the Christian view of creation. The tree represented the Garden of Eden. Its red apples were the symbol of knowledge that led to Adam's fall, and the green fir represented eternal life. First, bringing decorated trees into their homes in the 16th century, German Christians are credited with inaugurating the tradition of displaying Christmas trees indoors. But did you know that Egyptians embraced evergreens even earlier? Ancient Egyptians decked out their homes in green palm rushes on the winter solstice to celebrate the sun god Ra's recovery from the ills of winter, which they believed symbolized life conquering death. So even the Egyptians had us quote Santa Claus. Martin Luther was so moved by the sight of the stars shining above the evergreens that he recreated the shimmering spectacle by adding small lit candles to the branches of the fir tree. The tradition of adding lighted candles to the Christmas tree began. In 1610, when silver was precious commodity, Germans in Nuremberg displayed strands of silver, which came to be known as tinsel, on their Christmas trees. So I know where tinsel came from. The tradition of adding ornaments to trees kicked off in Germany in the 1600s when fruits and nuts were laid on the evergreens. Manufactured ornaments became all the rage when an image of Queen Victoria and German Prince Albert's Christmas tree, decked in baubles, was published in 1848 in the Illustrated London News. Wealthy consumers in America followed suit, and by the turn of the 20th century, Woolworths was selling 25 million in German imported ornaments to customers who were eager to dress their trees in royal fashion. The successor to candles, electric lights, didn't arrive until 1880 when Thomas Edison created the first strand of lights and wrapped them around his lab in Menlo Park, California. But it was Edison's partner, Edward H. Johnson, who first put a string of electric Christmas tree lights together and strung them around his tree in 1882. Rather than discard the clippings from the freshly cut and pruned Christmas trees, resourceful revelers of the 16th century salvaged the excess boughs and fashioned them into wreaths. So that's where our Christmas wreaths come from. The earliest tree topper was none other than the baby Jesus, a figure that was later swapped for other biblical symbols, namely angels and stars. The humble tradition of hanging a stocking from the mantle is said to have been inspired by a man of equally humble origins. Upon learning from villagers that a proud but local widower could not pull off dowry for his 3 daughters to wed, and unwilling to accept money from others, an oft-reported story says that St. Nicholas slid down the man's chimney and slipped gold coins into his daughters newly laundered stockings, which happened to hang by the fire. When the family came upon the gold the next day, their problems were solved and a new Christmas tradition was born. While merrymaking may hang sprigs of mistletoe during the holidays and pucker up when underneath it, the earliest use of herbs was decidedly less romantic. The Greeks used it as a panacea for ailments ranging from cramps to spleen problems, while Romans viewed it as a salve for ulcers and poisons. It's not until the 1st century AD when it earned secondary connotations. Because the herb mistletoe had the capacity to grow even in winter, the Celtic Druids saw it as a symbol of fertility and vitality. So mistletoe got its fame. Candy canes made their debut on American Christmas trees in 1847, when one August Imgard decorated his blue spruce tree with candies that were at the time all white. It wasn't until the turn of the 20th century that the characteristic red stripes and peppermint flavor were added. In 1812 publication of a children's fairy tale, Hansel and Gretel, is believed to have mainstreamed the holiday tradition of building gingerbread houses. So Hansel and Gretel is where we got the idea for gingerbread houses. The U.S. minister to Mexico, Joel R. Poinsett, in 1828, brought the red and green flowers home as a symbol of holiday season, earning their English name from poinsettia. Poinsettias were synonymous with Christmas by the turn of the 20th century. So poinsettias get their name from the man who first discovered them and promoted poinsettias. A snow globe acts as an interactive holiday decor and guarantees you a white Christmas no matter where you live. But it might come as a surprise that these handheld wonderlands were the result of an eccentric experiment. In the process of trying to improve the brightness of electric light bulbs in 1900, surgical instrument mechanic Aaron Pezzi poured semolina into a glass globe filled with water, creating an artificial snowfall that became the basis for the snow globe. He included a festive miniature diorama, and the rest is history. So first he figured out what to add together to make it snow, and then he decided that it should be maybe a little village or Santa Claus or somebody in there. Holly berries are poisonous to people, and pets. This didn't stop the Romans from displaying the boughs of winter hardy plant in their homes to celebrate Saturnalia, a winter festival honoring the gods of agriculture, Saturn, and marking the much anticipated transition from the darkness of winter to the lightness of spring. St. Francis of Assisi created the first real-life nativity scene way back in 1223, but only after he got approval from the Pope. He staged in a cave in an Italian town of Grosseto. Assisi's living nativity scene featured a manger and an ox and a donkey and drew nearby townspeople to watch as the saint delivered a biblical message. So there really were live people in that first nativity scene. Yule logs, named for Yule, an old winter solstice festival in Scandinavia, are typically lit on Christmas Eve to produce a festive ambiance and produce warmth. Yule logs of old were full-blown tree trunks. Families would cut down trees and then feed one end of the trunk into the fire, where it would slowly burn for the full 12 days of Christmas. Originating in the 14th century, small sachets or boxes filled with aromatic herbs were used to purify the air in Europe at the time of the Black Plague. Pomanders, derived from pomme d'ambre, the French equivalent of apple of amber, have been replaced with oranges studded with cloves and laced with spices, including ground cinnamon and nutmeg. So the first pomanders were to freshen the air during the Black Plague. And then now they've transferred on to oranges with cloves in them. Snowmen. The first documented snowmen appeared in 1380, which blew me away. But mankind has probably been making snowmen for as long as there's been snow. These Christmas symbols were especially popular during the Middle Ages, when many lacked the proper resources or outlets for artistic expression. So instead of trying to find traditional art supplies, they turned to snowmen as cheap Christmas decorations. And there was plenty of it. Michelangelo was even commissioned to build a snowman for the ruler of Florence. So you have a special snowman. Mistletoe stays green and bears fruit in the winter when other plants die. For this reason, it was held sacred by Native Americans, Celtic Druids, and Norsemen. Celtic people believed it brought good luck and warded off evil spirits. People started kissing under it because it was also a symbol of love and fertility. Don't think people much care about that part anymore. They just like to have an excuse to kiss somebody. Celebrating Christmas was banned in Scotland for over 300 years and only made legal in 1958. Yeah, this makes me super sad for Scotland, but at least they had Halloween. Finding the pickle ornament on the Christmas tree might lead to an extra gift, but no one seems to know where that came from. It was originally thought to be an old German tradition, but some say it may have been the invention of a Civil War soldier or a retailer who sold glass ornaments. So there might have been a profit-making idea behind it. Fruitcake originated in Egypt, which blew me away. They considered it an essential piece of luggage for the afterlife. It practically lasts for an eternity, so that makes sense. Candy canes can be traced back to Europe in the 1600s, but they didn't make an appearance in the United States until the 1800s. Also, until the 1900s, they were generally solid white. They didn't have stripes. Deck the Halls was originally a pagan Yuletide drinking song. Fa la 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 la, my party people. This tickles me to death that some of these songs were drinking songs. But they were, and they became popular. Jingle Bells was just a sleighing song. And if you read some of the original lyrics, it's about drag racing, as we'd call it today, your sleigh, and picking up chicks on the way. Because the words to it are about racing your sleigh and impressing the girls, so they would ride with you. So it's interesting to find out the background of some of these things. Jingle Bells was intended to be a Thanksgiving song. And you think about it, Jingle Bells doesn't say anything about Christmas. It's just about riding in the snow. Germans dyed goose feathers to make the first artificial Christmas tree. The Christmas tree was made out of goose feathers, and they dyed the goose feathers green. To me, it's a lot of work. Must be the goose feathers were symbolic of something. Rather than cutting down a tree, they made a tree and covered it with goose feathers that were dyed green. I don't know. I haven't found the beginning of that. Franklin Pierce was the first president to put a tree in the White House. The original Christmas ornaments were an apple put on the tree to represent the Garden of Eden. These were eventually replaced with round balls that we see today. So the balls that you put on a Christmas tree represent the apples that were first put on the tree as decoration. Robert L. May invented Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in 1939 as a way to get people into Montgomery Ward department store. Christmas was illegal in England from 1647 to 1660. The first state in the U.S. to declare Christmas as a holiday was Alabama. Nova Scotia, Canada leads the world in exporting Christmas trees. They do a brisk blueberry trade also. Norway is the birthplace of the Yule log. so many little trivia things. This first Christmas Carol drinking song was Deck the Halls. So when you sing Deck the Halls, have a glass with it. There's the Welsh and English lyrics found in the earliest publication was with this melody, Deck the Halls. Oh, how soft my fair one's bosom. Oh, how sweet the grove in blossom. Oh, how blessed are the blisses, words of love and mutual kisses. You thought it was all about Santa Claus. And like I said, Jingle Bells was originally a Thanksgiving song. I said about Jingle Bells being not so much a Christmas song, but as a dating song, as a, like we drag race and pick up girls. One of the verses is, now the ground is white, go it while you're young, take the girls tonight and sing this sleighing song. Just get a bobtail bay, 240 at his speed, hitch him to an open sleigh, and crack, you'll take the lead. That's the chick dating song. Jingle Bells was originally a Thanksgiving song. It was written and it was republished in 1857 with more recognizable Jingle Bells title to it. So they revamped them. Krampus is Santa's less friendly associate. That's the one I told about first, where he's the grumpy one that kids are supposed to be afraid of. That's why Santa looks at you to decide whether you're naughty or you're nice. And Santa will deal with you if you're nice. Krampus deals with you if you're naughty. Santa Claus comes from the Dutch name Sinterklaas. Different cultures have their own versions, such as Nabo Natali in Italy and Pierre Noël in France. The tradition of hanging stockings comes from the 12th century nuns who left socks filled with nuts, tangerines, and other fruits for the poor. Christmas cards. The first Christmas card was produced and sent by Sir Henry Cole in 1843. In the UK and other places, mince pies and beer or sherry are left out for Santa, while in Australia and France, carrots are left for the reindeer. In Japan, it's tradition to eat fried chicken from KFC. I've seen that a lot lately, that it is what you order on Christmas is KFC if you're in Japan. That's the traditional meal. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was an advertising gimmick created by a copywriter for the Montgomery Ward department store in 1939. White Christmas by Bing Crosby is the best-selling single of all time. Xmas is not a modern abbreviation, but dates back to the 16th century, where the X represents the Greek letter chi, C-H-I, the first letter of Christ. So X isn't negative. It is representing Christ. Christmas was outlawed in Boston, 1659 to 1681. Alabama was the first state to officially recognize Christmas as a holiday in 1836. And the first eggnog in the United States was consumed in the Jamestown settlement in 1607. So eggnog has been a standby. Let's see. Turkey was not always the favorite food at Christmas Day. Traditionally, it used to be a pig's head served with mustard. I'm glad we got turkey in.
Benjamin Franklin wanted the turkey to be the national bird.
Yes.
Rather than the eagle and everything.
Right, yeah. There was a big controversy about that. Yeah, the turkey should be the national bird. Yeah. Santa Claus is based on a real person, Saint Nicholas of Myra. Nicholas the Wonder Worker, Bishop Saint Nicholas of Smyrna, and Nicholas of Bari, who lived during the 4th century. He is the world's most popular non-biblical saint, and artists have portrayed him more often than the other saint, with the exception of Virgin Mary. He is the patron saint of banking, pawnbroking, pirating, butchery, sailing, thievery, orphans, royalty, and America's most loved urban metropolis, New York City. What was that for a representation? He represents everybody. Tinsel was once a status symbol. The shiny hanging decoration was made of real silver and was a sign of wealth if you had tinsel on your tree. The tallest Christmas tree ever displayed was in Seattle, Washington. It measured 221 feet tall. I hate to have to put the star on the top of that. Buying all the gifts from the 12 Days of Christmas song will cost you a ton of money. The most expensive being the swans a swimming, about $6,300. When the candy cane was invented in Germany, it was made into a J for Jesus. The red stripes symbolized his blood. Black Friday is not the busiest shopping day of the year. The 2 days before Christmas are. 1/3 of the 20 highest grossing movies were released during the Christmas season, proving that going to the movies after opening gifts is a popular tradition. Let's see. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer got his start as an advertising gimmick for Montgomery Ward in 1839. Paul McCartney earns $400,000 a year from his wonderful Christmas time song, which is widely regarded as the worst song ever written. I think that's just crazy when you think about being the most popular one, but people who write music think it's the worst song that was ever written. Christmas is not really Christ's birthday, as many believe. According to the Bible, Christmas was actually Christ was not actually born until the winter. But I can't put that together. If he wasn't born until the winter, why isn't Christmas?
It's because of Saturnalia, the pagan celebration and everything.
Right.
It was actually born earlier during the tax season.
Right.
That's why they were coming into Bethlehem to pay their taxes.
But the way this is written doesn't make any sense.
I know.
It doesn't explain to you why.
Yeah.
Toys for Tots was founded in LA. 5,000 toys were collected during the first drive in 1947. A handmade doll was the first donation. Bing Crosby's version of White Christmas is the highest selling single of all time. It only took 6 weeks for Charles Dickens to write A Christmas Carol. Must have popped right out. It only took, Americans purchase 1.6 billion Christmas cards every year. That's a lot of Christmas cards. Visa cards are used about 6,000 times every minute during the Christmas season. Let's see. The first artificial Christmas tree was made from goose feathers, as I said, and they dyed it green. Celebrations in the Middle Ages were often rowdy and resembled modern-day Mardi Gras. Yeah, when I read the early descriptions of Christmas, it wasn't religious and quiet and gift-giving, and it was party. It was drink it up and have a party and sing songs and be loud, and that's how it started out. Christmas celebrations in the Middle Ages were often rowdy and resembled modern-day Mardi Gras. The first eggnog in America was consumed in 1607 in Jamestown. Christmas was outlawed in Boston from 1659 to 1681, and offenders were fined.
Why was it outlawed?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question.
I don't know. I'd have to look at the history of Boston to see what was going on at that time. You know, Bill?
The Puritans, they
Oh, it had to be a religious reason.
yeah, they didn't like a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
They were fined, what, 5 shillings or something like that? I think they were fined if somebody.
Yeah, they were fined
Yeah.
for celebrating. Yeah.
So maybe it was like he's describing that it was used to be rowdy and debauchery.
Yeah.
And the Puritans didn't like that.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure it was tied together with that, yeah.
Yeah. It was the time period of who was.
But there was someplace else that you read a little while ago that was outlawed too. Was it in Europe? I can't remember. It wasn't just Boston. I thought.
No, it was banned in different places. Yeah. Teddy Roosevelt banned the Christmas tree from the White House, possibly for environmental reasons. But his young son snuck a tree in the house anyway. I love that so much, Dad. You're not going to let me have a Christmas tree. I'll get my own. This one kind of tickles me too. The wrong number that launched the Santa tracker. This is in our age. When the dreaded red phone rang inside the Continental Air Defense Command operations near the center on the last day of November 1955, the mood at the nerve center of America's nuclear defense turned tense. At a time when the Cold War raged and Soviet fighter jets routinely buzzed dangerously close to the Alaskan airspace, U.S. Air Force Colonel Harry Shoup knew that a call on the top secret hotline couldn't be good news. Anxious that the caller might be the Pentagon or a four-star general warning of an atomic attack on the United States, Shoup steeled himself as he answered the hotline that was directly wired from his command post in Colorado Springs, Colorado, to the Pentagon. As Shoup recalled decades later in an oral history interview, he picked up the receiver and said, "Yes, sir, this is Colonel Shoup." Met with only silence, he repeated, "Sir, this is Colonel Shoup." Still nothing. "Sir, can you read me all right?" Shoup asked before he received the most unexpected reply from the soft voice of a child. "Are you really Santa Claus?" Shoup's eyes immediately scanned the cavernous operations center. Who was the prankster? The deadly serious heart of America's defense against aerial assault was hardly the venue for a practical joke, and the colonel was not amused. "Would you repeat that, please?" Shoup barked. On the other end of the line, he heard the frightened youngster sobbing and realized this was no joke. Rather than admitting he wasn't Santa Claus, the 58-year-old father of 4 quickly assumed the part of St. Nick and listened to the child's Christmas wish list. As reported in the press the following day, the child had reversed 2 digits in the phone number to connect with Kris Kringle and instead reached one of America's most sensitive military installations. When President Dwight D. Eisenhower formed CONMAD in 1954 to provide early warning of an aerial attack from enemies such as Soviet Union, he asked the Joint Military Command with scanning the skies for Reds flying bomber planes, not a man in a red suit. "There may be a guy called Santa Claus at the North Pole, but he's not the one I worry about coming from that direction," Shoup told the International News Service. Still, the wrong number put the Colorado command post in a Yuletide mood and sparked a festive idea to soften its hard-edged public image. With an eye toward making an mission a little less scary to the American public, CONAD issued a press release that appeared in the newspapers around the country on Christmas Eve, letting good little boys and girls know that it was tracking a big red sleigh approaching from the North Pole. The command said the first reports from its radar and ground observation posts indicated that Santa Claus was traveling at 45 knots per hour at an altitude of 35,000 feet. The release also contained a bit of propaganda that reassured children that American forces would guard Santa and his sleigh on his trip to and from the U.S. against possible attack from those who do not believe in Santa Claus and Christmas. That was a clear allusion to the atheist Soviets and their comrades. When Shoup visited the troops on Christmas Eve to distribute cookies, he looked up at the 3-story tall map of North America continent that dominated the operations center to see that someone had sketched Santa's sleigh descending from the North Pole alongside the unidentified objects detected in American aerospace. According to Shoup's daughter, the jolly illustration sparked an idea in her father's mind. Calling for the public relations officer, the colonel arranged a phone call with a local radio station to report that Con Ed had stopped an unidentified flying object that looked like a sleigh. Other radio stations then began to phone in to get the latest update on Santa's location, and a Christmas tradition was cemented. The wires went nuts, and it got bigger and better every year. Shoup became known as Santa Colonel, a nickname he embraced. He was a very strict father, but he was a child about Christmas. He put the decorations up the day after Thanksgiving, and we were the first people I knew of who had bubble lights, which were brought from Japan. In 1958, responsibility for the Santa tracker was transferred from Con Ed to the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, after the United States and Canada joined forces for the continent's nuclear defense. Today, the Santa tracker might be what NORAD is best known for, beyond its star turn in the 1983 film War Games. Now officially known as NORAD Tracks Santa, the operation has evolved with technology and the times. During the 1960s, NORAD mailed vinyl records to radio stations that featured pre-recorded reports on Santa's progress and holiday music from its in-house orchestra. In the 1970s, NORAD took to the airwaves with television commercials. In the digital age, St. Nick's real-time progress can be monitored on social media, on smartphones and tablets through the official app on the NORAD Tracks Santa website, which is available in 8 languages. So now we even have NORAD tracing Santa Claus for the kids. And then this, I want to end with our own special Santa Claus. We, of course, you all know, had a Santa Claus school here in County. And when I looked up what was on the internet about it, I kept hearing people say, well, James Cagney and Edward G. Robinson both took lessons from Hoag. And then I hear people say, no, they didn't. They were never connected with our Santa Claus. Well, yeah, they were. In doing this research, I find Edward G. Robinson dressed as Santa Claus in the film Larceny Incorporated. It boasts quite the festive finale, with Pressure saving the day while clad in the Santa Claus attire. So he did dress up as Santa. James Cagney was not Santa in a traditional sense, but did play a character named Thaddeus McGillicuddy, or Terry Rooney, who becomes Santa in the 1937 musical Something to Sing About. So they both were portrayed as Santa, and they apparently both attended. The Democrat and Chronicle article clarifies that Cagney, along with Robinson, was a graduate of the Santa Claus School. So it was started to be published consistently in the 60s because people were saying, no, they never went to the Santa Claus School. Well, somebody did a lot of research and dug around and found out that both actors Whether they actually physically came here or corresponded with Howard, I still don't know about that. I think correspondence probably is more likely. But they were trained by Charles Howard on how to be a Santa Claus. That was what he did. This was talks about the schools dedicated to preparing people to portray Santa Claus, has been dubbed the world's longest running Santa school by Guinness World Records. Charles Howard Santa Claus School, founded in 1937 in Albion before moving to a larger location in Michigan, has been operating continuously for 84 years. The school covers topics including how to properly dress as Santa, how to sing and dance to Christmas music, how to make toys in a workshop, and how to ride a sleigh. The school was founded by Charles W. Howard, a farmer and toy maker, whose St. Nick credentials included playing Santa in various department stores and in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Charlie believed to portray the image of Santa is a privilege, not a job. He built the school so there will be Santas for the kids and families. Santa stands for love and giving. That's what the spirit of Christmas is. It is the longest running Santa school anywhere in the United States. We teach the heart of Santa. That's what stands us apart from all other schools that have started after the Charles W. Howard Santa Claus School. So we have had the main Santa Claus School in the United States since the 1930s. Anybody have any questions, comments? Okay, well, thanks for listening, and have a Merry Christmas, everybody.
It sounded like a lot of things came from